welcome to 2 a.m. Radio. Today we have a very special guest who goes by the name Arthemort. He is the NFT specialist at Sotheby's, the co-founder of Art Crush, and a master art creator. Arthemort, thank you so much for joining me, man.
Sorry, I was muted. Hey, mates. Happy to be there. Starting well.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So let's get right into it, man. I know your time is limited. So how did you first discover the art world, man?
Yeah, thank you for getting me in, mate. I've just shared the space just before, so a few people can join in. Thanks for preparing all those questions. It's really that we get the space. Often they are a bit improvised, but you actually made a bunch of list of questions that was really interesting. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
About the introduction to the art world. So I come from a very privileged background, and I was lucky enough to have parents that were involved in collecting contemporary art, especially French contemporary art. So I sort of grew up surrounded by art all my life, which is, you'll see something that is quite common to many people involved in art, I believe. Like, many people have either a connection to their family or close friends. It can be a grandfather that was interested in art or collected a few things. So that was directly to my parents, and well, the first sort of eureka moments I had with art was when I went to see in London the Weather Project by Iceland artist Olafur Eliasson, that you might know of because he did an exhibition at the Chateau de Versailles a few years ago, and he's just a really well-known world-class artist. He has an entire episode about him on a Netflix show called Abstract Design. I really advise anyone that haven't seen it to go check it out, because it's quite a cool show and just a very cool episode with Olafur. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. As if you don't know what the Weather Project was, it was at the Tate Museum. A huge installation with the typical colors that sort of Olafur Eliasson came up with, that has the specificity to neutralize any other colors of the visible spectrum. So you would get into that huge museum, and suddenly all the colors was gone. Even your skin would look black, and it was just really an odd experience. And it's just something that sort of really marked me. And since then, I think Olafur has been one of my favorite artists of all time. And I've just sort of developed a taste for art experiences and art exhibition, and just going to the museum and galleries and all of that. And that's became clear as well when I became an adult, and that I was looking for what my vocation is going to be. I worked a bit in auction houses, galleries, blockchain art companies, pre-NFT. And so I sort of figured out that was the fields I wanted to work in.
That's super interesting, man. So in a way, you kind of naturally fell in love with art. It wasn't something that was forced because your parents were into it. I'm guessing your family as well. So you just naturally, by your own accord, kind of like fell in love with it. It was really natural.
Yeah. I mean, like, my older sisters and brothers, that they're not into the art market, so all of it cannot be, I guess, fully attributed to my parents, especially since it was quite a sort of exclusive passion between the two of them. They wouldn't share much about their passion, so it was really up to us to sort of get interested in it. So yeah, it was, I guess, one of my main qualities. I'm someone that has a lot of curiosity. And whether it's the blockchain or the art world, those are two worlds that I think you can never get enough of. Like, you will always have something to learn about, something new to check out. And that's something that is really important to me, to not get bored, I guess. It's to, evolve in the field that has unlimited supply of wonders and just innovation and just things to see all the time, I'd say.
So in your opinion, you still feel like you're still discovering art, you're still finding new things every day, you're not getting tired of it?
Oh, no, absolutely. I can deal. I've my listing of artists in Web3 that is like full of tens of thousands of artists, and I can add to that list every day. So, I discover either new artists or just new art those artists made, or new concept, or there's just like so many area of the art world that I don't know of. Like, I'm not an expert on master or on I don't know, my passion are more like about design and very pictorial contemporary art. There's a lot of technique I don't know about. There's a lot of market I don't know about. There's a lot of artists I don't know about, and just a huge chunk of art history that I'm surely not knowledgeable on. So there's literally an infinite source of curiosity in the art world, and I guess the same thing for the blockchain is true. It's like it's a realm that you never get tired of, I believe.
Wow. Let me just take a moment to applaud you, man, because you're capable of saying, I don't know everything, and I think it's a big strength in our time, when we all assume we know everything, and that's just exceptional. So, bravo, man. That's how you learn more, right? You keep telling yourself, I don't know everything, so you discover more. So that's really great, man.
Yeah, even more to that, like there's the things that I know, the things I know I don't know, and there's surely a large majority of things that I don't even know I don't know. So there's a lot to it to discover and to get better. And I'm still young, so it's only natural. I still have a lot to learn. I
Yeah,
don't have like a huge academic background either, so I don't have a PhD or anything. So it's there's a lot to it for sure.
you're 25, right? I think that's what I heard last time I heard you on this
Yeah,
place.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
25. Man, that's amazing. That's amazing, bro. Yeah. I think it's a real blessing that at that young age you were able to find your passion so quickly because it takes some people a lot of time to find what they want to do in life. So really cool stuff, man. So in your opinion, what defines great art? I know it's a tough question, but I'm looking forward to your answer.
It was perhaps the toughest question out of all you had. I was like, oh, that just the second question is gonna start really intensely. And honestly, there's not a really good answer to it. It's like I guess the answer to that question has changed through many times throughout art history. When there was um, uh, uh, when Marcel Duchamp sort of tackled the question, suddenly it becomes that any art. It wasn't the question about what's the great art and what's not. It was more about what's art. And nowadays, I guess the question is more about is great artist the one making great art? Can an artist that's not that great make great art as well? It's tough. I guess there's a few components we like to see into like what we consider as a great artwork. So great composition, great subjects, overall great technique, and an artist that sort of embody that work. And then after a while, I guess a lot of it to what was great art was attributed to the sense and the impact this art could have on society. So that's sort of a evolution or what recently happened. But I guess like a sort of a getaway answer to the question would be to say that I guess the great art is the art you least expect it to be. Like if something is an artwork sort of ticks all the boxes that you sort of define for yourself as what is great artwork, then yeah, it perhaps might be a really great artwork. But I think like the greatest of artwork might be the one that sort of go outside of the things you knew would compose a great artwork. Sort of going back to what I was saying with things you don't know. And so it is a plane going over me. And so yeah, I guess it's about surprise and sort of igniting that curiosity I was telling you about is like
Right.
trying to find some artwork that surprise you and just isn't expected and goes beyond what you sort of have yeah,
So,
identified as characters of a great artwork, if that makes sense.
so what did you think when you first saw the Marcel Duchamp's toilet? Were you defining that as great art? Were you confused? What did you think?
So it's an example we have to use is like yeah, in courses and stuff, but I was aware of that story way before, like as a teenager. And it was sarcastic. So I thought it was something that was funny. And what's more interesting about that work is less the work itself, but the story behind it. Of
Right.
course, of Marcel Duchamp presenting it as a to a jury under an alias and being part of that very same jury and going out of his sort of yeah, just surprising the jury and doing something a bit subversive was the most interesting about it. Otherwise, aesthetically, his work does really don't have much to offer. But it just the changes of least going out of the canons defined by elites and just uh, uh, the intellectuals base of the art world that would define canon of art and that would define what is good and bad art. Or it was less about good and bad art. It was just like it's art and it's not. It was sort of neglecting and just inter preventing artists to even just be able to pretend they were making art, which was the most challenging aspect of it. So it sort of, I believe, opened up the gateways to many people that didn't really define themselves as artists to understand that yes, they could be artists as long as they produce work that they sign, and that the fact that they sign something and that they decide to support the narrative and the rationale of something being art is enough for it to be art. And I believe that since then, and that's been, no, that's happened, I think 70 years ago, or 60 years ago, or even more. Um, since then, we haven't made much innovation on that topic. We're still going with what an artist make is by definition art. And since everything can be art, now the question of what is good and bad art sort of come back to the table. And there is again not a very good method to it to understand and sort of
Right.
manage to see what compose it. But it's just nice to see that even if art is a notion that exists since the dawn of humanity, that we can still expand on the concept and we can still develop that idea and I guess it's more up to the artist to produce art in the end, and the critic and the gatekeepers and galleries that can come all on the way are meaningful and useful and impactful, but the aim is not to just please those people, but rather to surprise them, as I say. And I've been waiting for something really that would surprise art on what the notion of art is. NFT sort of help to develop a few of the notion that exist, especially the concept of immateriality, which is we could seems new with NFT, but has a long history as well. Like Yves Klein, for example, did the exhibition of emptiness in the early 70s, and that was about that notion of immortality. So yeah, and NFT, I guess, give a larger debate space for those notions to be developed. And I believe that in the next 10 years, perhaps there will be some sort of breakthrough to understanding that art doesn't need to be an object. It can be, more of the realm of ideas, and that its digital existence can be something meaningful as well. It takes away the decorative aspect of an artwork. It takes away a lot of the substance that people attribute to art through medium and just technique, and throw it out the windows and I guess open up the debate to a larger realm of potential artwork and involving in the debate digital artists that were for the most part out of the serai of the art world and just out of the debate of what is art. And you can see it from the legal definition of art in France and Europe. At the moment, the definition of art doesn't really cover anything created digitally. It still refers art as an object, a tangible object. So there's, yeah, I guess that notion of intangibility might be the most interesting new realm of creativity that's been developed in the few last decades.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting what you're saying because as an artist, I usually spend a lot of time meditating and questioning has it all been done? Are we still in the capacity to surprise and challenge people that are interested in art? What do you think? Like when you think about Marcel Duchamp, I keep bringing this up, but the toilet for me was super revolutionary, and I'm questioning like, can we still do that? Can we still come up with soup cans like Andy Warhol? Can we still, challenge people? What do you think?
I think it's important to be aware of what has been done, but you shouldn't be too worried about is that thing been done before,
Right.
because what's most important is the context in which those things have been done. You can do something that has been done 1,000 years ago, but if you do it in a new context, with a new meaning that fits your contemporary reality, with fits something that happening here and now, then it's sort of, it becomes something new and something unique on its own rights. So, you know, all the idea that could ever existed, I've already thought one time at least, and perhaps every artwork that could have ever been created or thought about, or every concept that could have been thought about, but have already been done at some point. But it's about doing it nonetheless, and doing it perhaps in a new context or throughout a new audience or with a new meaning. Those questions that arts try to tackle, the question are, eternals and will always remain, and the answer we provide to those questions are just ephemeral and fits a social economical context, some sort of contemporary realities, and the question will remain all for eternity. The answer we'll provide to it will change with time, and I guess the work of artists might be to try to offer an answer to those questions that reflects their reality and what they're experimenting here and now. It's all about providing a view of your own subjectivities as an artist. Art is a mean of communication, and so it's not the same if you communicate, if look at something that's been done a century ago. uh, it can still be meaningful and I think logical to do it nowadays, as long as you give it to its sense and meaning.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome answer, man. Um, Turning over to Web3, do you recall what your first NFT purchase was?
Yeah, absolutely. I still hold it to this day. My first NFT purchase, I was quite lucky. It was the Genesis NFT of People, the Politic is Bullshit edition of 100 on NFT Getaway.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
and yeah, I think I bought it for like $500 or something. And I still have it to this day. And I would just like, yeah, I was working in blockchain and art before that, but the term NFT wasn't really existing before. And what I've had bought were more RC20 and more conceptual project like I Am a Coin for Kevin Bosch. So that's not really an NFT, but that was the first more crypto art project I dwell with. But the first RC, 720, 721 or 1155, it was that People edition. Politic is bullshit.
So you said $500 at Beeple. When you were purchasing it, were you a bit worried about, because that's a lot of money, right? Were you feeling like you were taking a risk, or were you like, this is great, I'm into it 100%? What was your thought process in the moment?
Sure, it was a lot of money because I was like 21, 22. I don't remember exactly, but I never had bought an artwork that was in those sort of range of prices.
Yeah.
So I was a bit, yeah, I thought it about for, I think, around the idea for like 3 days, but I was so obsessed with the fact of wanting to have it that I sort of take the plunge. But no, I was quite confident. I mean, I knew the entire thing with blockchain and art and the synergy that existed and how important it was. I was a convinced supporter of blockchain in art since pretty much 2016, 2017, when those questions started to be thought about and just discussed by people like Jason Bailey, Fanina Kuble, George Bach, or even Kate Vass at the gallery she had in Swiss. So I knew what I was doing. Honestly, when the NFT came about, to me, it was almost like a manifest destiny moment. I believe about the movement of crypto art for years before that, and I was just waiting for the right support to provide some sort of basis for the entire movement to exist. And whenever I saw I think it was the story of people saying, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this thing. It's blockchain and it's art, and I don't really know that is about, but who cares? It's just $1, so you can go for it." So I thought, okay, yeah, well, it's just $1. I might as well try it. So I tried it, didn't got it, and in the end, I just had to. I went to the secondary market and purchase it right away. So yeah, it was, to me, it was a moment of sort of manifest destiny, if it makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And here's a question: when do you feel like taking a plunge in the NFT world is still something you should do because of how risky it is, right? But do you feel like taking risk is still important today?
But I mean, I guess it's the same thing if you're asking yourself for art. It's anything you buy as artwork is, I guess, if you look at through the lenses of an investment, is a risky investment. But I believe that is important for trad art collectors or just people that doesn't really play with art at all in their life to be curious. And it's the main quality that any art collectors and artists, I guess, have in common is curiosity. And so, I think that digital is certainly not just an ephemeral trend, but something that will impact society for the next decade for sure. And those new type of creation and those artists that are populating the space at the moment are, I think, really important artists. And the NFT space is where you can discover artists. To me, like I don't really discover much artists when I go in gallery because you often see the same names or you have seen those artists before. But if you're looking for new emerging artists, I think there's nowhere better than Web3 for that. And so that's why I often urge gallery that ask me about how can I get involved with NFT. Many galleries still think about that. I often tell them not to think about how to get their artists they represent to show to produce NFT, but rather to represent artists from that ecosystem because it's just a huge source of difference, talented artists that are really very much still emerging in their career, and that could have, I think, a really interesting and bright future in the broader art market and broader art world, not just the NFT space. So yeah, for that reason, I think I'll still advise anyone to just get involved with it, or at least get interested and curious about what sort of art is produced on the blockchain and what sort of artists are important in the realm of Web3.
And do you feel like galleries have to adapt Web3 to survive? Do you feel like it's something at one point they have to do in order to stay relevant?
Difficult to say, gallery to stay relevant. Much galleries still try to figure it out. Instagram still trying to figure it out. Social media. So, the art world is not a world of early adopter of new technology. But
Right.
weirdly enough, uh, we don't adapt the new format and the new sort of practice to our business practice in the art market. But the artists that populate that market have been thinking about those problematic like before many 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 people like those artists are often early adopters of new technology, so it's an interesting sort of paradox happening. For example, the topic of AI in art has been thought about in the art world for over a decade now, and the first sales of AI-based art, AI-based art, can be traced back from as early as 2014, 2016. So they're paradoxically very in advance on new trends and new practice, but yet are quite slow at adapting those into their business. So it's a double-edged sword. I guess a lot of it has to do with the fact that the art market and being a gallery, often galleries I know of, they sometimes they are 70, 80 years old, but they're not looking to get retired anytime soon. Like we often say that they will step out of the gallery with the 2 feet in front, because the only way they will stop being a gallerist is they was gonna die. So there's a challenge of, I guess, transmission in gallery. There's like really rare example of galleries when upon the death, like Suzanne Taravies, for example, that sort of transmitted their gallery to a full collaborator, among which was a sort of quite young person as well, under 30. But that's really rare and quite unique. Usually, whenever a gallerist that has an eponym gallery attached to him dies, well, the gallery sort of dies with it as well. Um, so yeah, there's those challenges. I think they already have the system that works well, so they don't really see the reason to sort of branch out to new system. And I guess this will change as the character base gets renewed. I mean, a large chunk of traditional art collectors are really old, and so they're not going to be there in the next 10 to 20 years. So that raises the question if those galleries are going to try to cater to new audiences and new collectors base that might be more Gen X and millennials, so more like 35 to 55 sort of base. I haven't seen really a trend sort of confirming that, but the reality is that just the buyer base of the art market that is at the moment the most important will most likely not be there in 30 years. So it raises the question: so what will be the standard in 30 years. I do hope we get, modernize that market and adopt more digital native practice and just, uh, overall more transparency. But I think that the tendency for transparency, for example, is starting to be more of a reality. You can see more and more gallery showing prices, which is not something you get often, honestly. Most of the
Right.
time, when you go in a gallery, you don't have any of the prices shown. And to get the prices, you need to be in the little paper of the galleries and things like that. Depends case by case, but usually, even just on the topic of transparency, there's a lot left to be done, and that's where I see a few tendency perhaps evolving. I see more galleries showing prices of the artwork in their gallery, and I just see, yeah, people being more interested by digital creation, new media art installation, and even just the create sort of aesthetic that can be derivated by the internet culture. I see a lot of talented people on TikTok that I think don't think of themselves as artists, but rather creator, who are truly sort of artists and developing the new aesthetic of tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, it's a long process. I think as long as we don't have new galleries and perhaps younger generation galleries, there might not be many venues or opportunity for Web3 artists and digital artists to be presented in the broader art market. And a lot has to do with the fact that you can barely get any bank loan to open a gallery. It's most gallery, like 80% of galleries close within the first 3 years they open. So it's a competitive market, and it's a market that's difficult to be part of as a young entrepreneur or just something that is under 30. I was really fortunate to have the job I had at Sotheby's at my age. Most of the people that had my age and that was working at Sotheby's were intern. And most of the people I know that even have PhD or just a lot of diploma still working for barely minimum wage in the market, in the art market, or even just still working as intern and unpaid intern. So it's a market with a lot of competition, especially on the job side, but we have a lot of challenges and barrier on the entrepreneurship side as well. So hopefully that will change in the future. Perhaps it would be more easier to, I guess, the financialization of art sort of might help with that, because nowadays if you go to a bank and you explain them you have $1 million worth in stock of artworks, to them that's worthless. A stock of artwork doesn't really go into your contability. So it's
Oh, really?
yeah, but it's not the same. Like if you have a machine that costs 200K, you can sell that machine at any time and you can get a loan against the value of the machine. But you cannot get a loan for with an artwork in any banks. At least in France you might have one that do that, but really sporadically. So most of the time, not work is not something you can use as a collateral. And since as a gallery, the only sort of things you have within your stock is artworks, then you virtually have nothing in your stock. And so it's for bankers to sort of approach that notion and see how they can support you financially to open up a gallery. Is quite difficult. So yeah, the challenges, I guess, with new practices is to make it so that the new generation have a play in that world, and that we just don't have to wait for the old guard to sort of die of old age. That's the main challenges, I guess, for the market to evolve, is to get in new actors, new sellers, new intermediaries that just have adopted those new codes of digital reality and might be just from the new generation. But yeah, it's a topic that if I had the answer to, I'd be really
No, this
happy
is
with.
fascinating, man. This is really fascinating because I didn't know that. Because when you were saying that banks don't take art as collateral, do you mean it depends on the artist? Like imagine if you had like okay, like a Picasso or something, they would take it, right? They're not crazy,
Uh,
right?
well, first there's Picasso prints that worth are virtually worthless. Like you can get a Picasso edition prints
Right.
for a few $100s if you want, but no. Even if you have works that is objectively worth a lot of money, uh, there's not any banks that will be willing to give you
Wow.
loans for it, unless if you're like if it's already, I mean, it would be a collateral that would not be that valorized, because just the banker is not trained or just knowledgeable enough about the market to know if that
Right.
value is really stable or reliable on. So yeah, it would be virtually impossible to do so.
Well, man, you learn things every day, huh? Because I swear I would have walked in there with, if I had that, you know what I'm saying? Like I would, me, if I needed a loan, I totally assumed that, artworks would be valuable. I never saw the other aspect that not everybody is into art. Not everybody understands its value. And yeah, I mean, I know the other day, you would know much more than me. I believe I saw Mugliani go at auction. The person bought it for 40 million and only got 30 million back. So I can kind of understand as well that it fluctuates just like the market, and there's massive losses. There's still potential, even if the name is massive, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons you don't really pay capital tax on art as well, because the fiscal authorities are not competent enough to say, oh, the things you have on the wall worth that much. You might pay, you do pay taxes on your Ferrari every years as capital taxes, but you don't really do on artwork because that sort of is difficult to evaluate. So you only pay taxes upon buying and selling, not upon holding it as capital. So it's not really recognized as capital by such, at least from a financial standpoint. So that might be one of the reasons as well where it's difficult to get a loan against it.
Well, that's fascinating. So, do you see yourself becoming an artist one day?
Well, I truly lack talent, so might not be the greatest artist. So I'm a bit creative with a few things I do, but I play guitar. I like music, and I have a bunch of friends and family members that are artists or are dwelling with creative aspects. And I think being a gallerist or being a curator is already still a really creative job because you have to think about scenography and you have many things you can get creative with and play with artistically. But to me, to sort of change to being an artist, I'm just sort of trying to be objective about my skills and artistical talents. And I'm someone that has zero knowledge on technique and zero artistical talents, and that's might be why is the reason that I like to sort of showcase one with talents and trying to support the one with talent because I realize that I truly lack talent and therefore I'm very admirative and contemplative of people with creative talents for that reason.
Well, in your defense, man, I think your way of curating, and I looked through your gallery, and I think the way you choose art, you have your own type of art without it being necessarily paint or whatever, something physical. You have your eye that's your artistic talent is finding talent. I think that's an art in itself. So yeah, but really interesting. Because most people that are immersed in art usually try their hand at it. So you really just accepted it from the beginning. You're like, this isn't for me. I'm just gonna collect art, right?
Yeah, sure. I like very much photography as well. I've been taking photograph for over 10 years, and I had the chance to travel to nearly 100 countries in my life and to be in places like the Arctic, Antarctic, and the Arctic Circle. And so, you get great pictures when you go in great places.
Right.
And I might be an okay landscape photographer, but I don't really have a unique artistical proposition. I do it as a recreative activities. Really, I don't have the ambition or even the pretension of giving sense to what I photograph or to present it as a collection. But that might come at some point. It's just that so far I'm having much more fun doing it as I'm doing it, and I feel like that's where I'm good at, and that's where I can excel. And so I try to sort of focus on the things I'm good at rather than trying to branching out on things that I'm not so sure about.
So how did you feel when you learned you had secured the position at Sotheby's, man, as NFT specialist? It's pretty major.
Yeah, it was cool, especially when there was it was a long recruiting process that spread out over almost 5 months. So I've sort of applied there in February and only got a written confirmation that I got the job in July. So it was quite a long period. I had like 12 interview, was really intense.
Jeez.
And so I was excited. I guess the main sort of sentiment I had was that I was excited to start and sort of do something. Like the idea of me applying to that job was that I was getting priced out of the market as a collectors, and there was not so much I could do to support artists this day. And I wanted to be somewhere I could have an impact. And Sotheby's felt like the best place to do so. But yeah, I was quite happy to be selected among, like, I think there was like 800 people that applied to the job. Uh,
Insane.
and so it was quite insane to be the one selected among 800. But yeah, I was quite proud. I guess that would have made my my dad proud as well. He was a big fan of Sotheby's and just quite admirative about that. So yeah, it was a good step. I don't regret it. I wish I could have done more stuff while I was there, but yeah, I was just excited by the idea of doing stuff, I guess.
So you're no longer at Sotheby's? Did you
No,
quit?
no, yeah, I've left the company late July of this year.
Okay, cool. And what was your biggest challenge when you were there, as a in that position?
Well, there was everything to be done. So the I joined the Paris office, and I was in charge of European activities of NFT and just the Paris office in its globality for NFT. And all the sales we had organized so far were in Hong Kong and New York. And Sotheby's is a company that is organized matricially. So each office have their own sort of directive and on leadership and management and objective and accountability. So there was everything left to be done. We have to figure out what tax we would put on that, how to deal with the post-sale system,
Right.
and just involve and just include it in the larger programmation of auction there were in Paris. So yeah, the fact that you have everything to be done was quite challenging because you had to train the teams on this topic, and you had to do a lot of coordination between different offices, which is something that doesn't really happen that often. And the fact that I actually had to work with Hong Kong and New York a lot was quite challenging because, well, that means you have a lot of works early in the morning when Hong Kong is still awake,
Right.
and then a huge sort of moment of silence, and then by the end of the day, you would have New York waking up with a lot of things coming up. So the fact that you had to organize pretty much with teams across the world on a daily basis, that was quite challenging, just in terms of times and time management and organization. So yeah, that was I guess quite challenging, and just the fact that remember that Sotheby's is a company that exists for like over 3 centuries. So
Right.
some of the system are really well in place and difficult to move and innovate on. So you still have to deal with that a lot for sure.
And last time we talked on the spaces was I asked you a question and it really stuck with me because I asked you how do you think what do you think is the best way for artists to end up at Sotheby's on an auction or whatever the whole shebang. But your answer was really interesting to me because you said it shouldn't be an artist's goal to be on Sotheby's. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's funny because my activities at Sotheby's was quite different from the one of others department because I would actually develop primary market activities, so working directly with artists on drops and not necessarily with collectors that have bought the works. And usually auction houses only operate on the secondary market. So
Right.
operating on the primary market is really specific to the activities of Sotheby's on NFT, um, and the image that Sotheby's has and just auction houses have in the space is really different from what they have in the trad art world. So in NFT, some people consider Sotheby's and going to Sotheby's as some sort of institutional recognition, which I understand because there's a lack of institutional representation in the space. There's barely any museum involved. There's barely any FRAC or others public initiative or residence program that are involved or just including digital artists at all. So that was one of the reasons. And so in traditional art gallery, for example, if you have an artist, you often sign an agreement with collectors so they don't resell the work within the next 3 to 5 years, and that's to prevent having any supply of the artist you represent to be on auction houses, namely Sotheby's and Christie's, because as a gallerist, your aim is to valorize the work of your artists sort of at the rate of generally 10% a year, increase prices. But whenever something goes to auction, but then there is no safety nets. So it's all about demand and off what's demand and ask. And so it's usually you can get work from contemporary art artists for much cheaper in auction that you would find that you would have at the gallery, so it impacts negatively the perceived value of the artist. So gallery will usually do their best to avoid any of their artists to be shown at Sotheby's, Christie's, or any other auction houses. And in Web3, it's quite the opposite. We are looking for that, and we sort of want that. And auction, it's a trial by fire. It's something that's you don't have any safety nets. You don't really control your prices, and whatever is the last bid, you must accept. So it's quite nerve wracking for artists and can be challenging and discouraging sometimes. And Sotheby's doesn't, or any auction houses, they don't represent artists. They're not there for your long term valuation as artists. They're here to be an intermediary of sales and make a commission on a sale. And if everybody can win on that operation, that's even better. But it just, yeah, the role of auction houses is not the same in Web3 that they are in trad art. And usually, if you ask any trad art artist, their objective in life is to be, I don't know, part of a permanent collection, a major museum, to have, I don't know, a solo show in every continent or in major art capitals, to be presented in major art fairs, but it's rarely and almost never actually to be featured in a large auction of a large auction houses. So what I mean by that is it's not that it's not good to be shown in those auction houses, especially if your NFT artist is actually quite beneficial, I believe. But just that as an artist, I think you should have different objective, and those objectives should be geared toward the long term valuation of your art, and just perhaps to be impactful in art history and to be shown in major public institution and just major location rather than, I guess, being shown in a major auction houses.
Yeah, because so do you feel like auction houses kind of cap the price on what an artist could be? So people usually reference that price to what they buy for an artist. This is what they go to when they're looking at an artist. How much is it worth? How much did it sell at auction, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, in trade of market, it's the only public data you have. So yes, people usually
Yeah.
refer to that. And so if you look at the last sale result of, I don't know, any artist, and you say, oh, you see it's 20,000 in auction. If you go to the gallery, you're most likely not going to get anything under 30,000, and you might think, oh, well, that's weird. That's a 30% increase.
Right.
But the truth is, it's just that it's not the art market is not that of a liquid market at all, and most of the things you buy, you will struggle to sell, and that's just a reality. And that might be one of the reasons why the people usually hold their artwork at least like 8 to 10 years, because just of that lack of liquidity. But yeah, it's just that in the art market is the only data you have available, and so if you base that when you go in gallery for primary work, you will be really surprised that those come with a premium, and that's normal because the gallery does much more than just selling artwork. They represent the artist, they find them, residency program. They try to include them in institutional collection. They obviously have a space that runs with their own charges, and they write text. They do so many more than just selling artwork. They're not just dealer. Galleries is not just an art dealer. Those are really different profession. And yeah, so as a gallerist, you don't want that much of your artist supplies to go to dealers. You want to be the sole sort of uh, access point to that artist, and that's enable you to have enough control on the artist production, so you can valorize his work years by years on a long term basis, so they can make a long lasting career. So that's the main difference, I guess. It's just that those companies don't really have the same objective, and they don't work with artists in the same way altogether. And so, as an artist, if you want to see long term, uh, looking for gallery representation might be your main, I guess, your first step or your first goal before being shown or auction off in major auction houses.
Mm. So one last question before we move on the subject, and which great information. I think all artists should hear this because I feel, me personally, that this whole Sotheby's, or being an auction, not just Sotheby's, being in an auction, the fantasy was started with the Beeple auction, right? So my last question to you and the subject is, do you feel like in the future there could be another auction just as important as the Beeple auction?
I guess auction have been important moment. Like you can mention the auction that was done with the Saatchi Gallery for young British artists. So that's where Damien Hirst got his sort of first success. And that spearheaded an entire sort of representation for young British artists to be important in the market after that. So auction can be major events, that's for sure. And but the auction at Christie's was a ludicrous moment. The reserve for the artwork was, I believe, $100, or the bidding was starting at $1 or something like that. So nobody had a clue of where the art was going to be sort of reaching. But it was bought by Metacovan, which is crypto native collectors. So it was neutral art collectors. So I think now we have the platform and we have the venues that are natively from the space that can provide the sort of things. I don't really need auction houses to do so. But then again, you know, it's all about, do we follow the market or try to make the market? I guess Sotheby's and Christie still have a legitimacy within the market to be considered as market maker, and this is something I've tried to achieve within the auction I've created myself. So the one with Delucres, for example, was the first dedicated auction to one artist at Sotheby's, and so that enabled that artist to break the glass ceiling of 10 ETH sales, for example, which was the objective. And then I had the auction on 3D art animation called Natively Digital Oddly Satisfying. And then again, it was a bit of a bet on my side, trying to give the light backs to 3D artists, 3D animators, sorry, that were quite sought after in the early days of the NFT market in early 2020, late 2020, early 2021, but sort of in the past few years were not the artists that most people were looking up to this day. So the objective was try to sort of get them back on stage and bring them back to the light. So a lot of them haven't minted in over a year sometimes. So it was try to involve them back within the space, and yeah, when that's done with meaning, I think that this can be important. And even the goose sale, what that happened this summer was quite, I think, important to give hope to many people in the space that those NFTs, especially Gen Art, have a long lasting market value that can be reliable and a basis of the entire space of artists, I believe. So yeah, it can be historical, and the goose sales can, even if it was just not even a tenth of what the people sales went for, uh, are important moment in the space where I think a lot of people sort of gather around and expect. It's quite entertaining. The auctions.
Right.
An auction is really an auctioneer is an entertainer. It's a spectacle. You have a lot of codes. You have a lot of rhythm. It's a vibrant moment, a lot of energy, and so I think those things sort of echoes the adrenaline rush you can have with an NFT drop, even fully online, and so that caters to that sort of notion, and I think that's something that still has its place. It's just that the role of Sotheby's and auction houses into space with the next years might go back to something more close to what they just do in others departments, focusing on secondary market work, focusing on high value artwork with proven demand for it, and will less and less show emerging artists and or work directly with artists. I think it's something I've tried to develop that was successful at some scales, but really cannot really be compared to other things. Like if I the auction oddly satisfying, I think brought up like uh, something just under $500,000 in sales. But if you look at those things, took me 4 months of work, 50 artists to deal with, a lot of resources in post sales to involve, and you can make the same result with selling tree Densa. So I think they will just try to sell Trifidenza because that's just more time, effort, efficient, and easier to deal with than working with 50 different artists on unproven art segments with artists in the manies. So I think that might be the things that might change in the next few years, which with institution finally taking their roles within the space as well. So yeah, I think that might change in the future. We'll see. Who I am to know.
Yeah, this what makes it so exciting. We don't know what's gonna happen next, right? Anything
Mhm.
is possible. So moving on from that, you are the co-founder of Art Crush. How did you guys come about the idea of Art Crush?
So Mathieu France, who is the founder of Art Crush, approached me during a curation I've did at a Web3 event called the Metaverse Summit. I curated the works for their private party at the Atelier de Lumière, which is a projection mapping place. And Mathieu had long experiences in the domains of out of companies that we could call billboards companies, and he's a big fan of projection as well as me. And so we sort of talked about, and so we founded Art Crush at the same time as I joined Sotheby's. And the idea was that as a curator, I'm often faced with the fact that putting up an NFT exhibition is quite costly. You got to find the right location. You got to find the right display, and display costs can be quite exponential. And so, as a curator, I didn't have many opportunity where I could make shows that were economically worthwhile. But with Art Crush, there is all those display across the world, hundreds of thousands of billboards across the world that are used to show publicity, but could be used to show art. And the idea was to bring art to the streets and a bit with a sort of street art mentality, with savage exhibition and things that are a bit sometimes illegal, but just trying to bring art to people that might not want to ever thought about going to museum or gallery. Now you can see art while waiting for your bus, while going out of the train in Belgium. Like for the moment, in a week or so, we'll have every 15 minutes, every day. We'll have NFT art shown in all of the screens in all of the train station of Belgium, and that's about 500 screens.
Wow.
So, and how many people goes to train station on a daily basis? So that's a lot of exposure and visibility for art, a just new type of aesthetic. And so that for me as a curator, that was the main sort of incentive for me to get involved in Art Crush, was that I could create and exhibit artists in mass across the world for the fraction of the cost that it would for me to do it within a ERL location with display that I would rent.
Yeah, when I saw what you guys were doing, and I think I was on social media when I saw. I think it was last year. Maybe it was you. I think it was you that was projecting a next copy in the buildings in Paris. Um, I know you guys went around and did that. I got real excited, man, because for me personally, I feel like you are the next step of what Keith Haring and Basquiat and all those graffiti guys did back in the 80s and the 90s. This is when you you put art in front of people if they want to or not. You know what I'm saying? They this the best way to come across art is to discover it. And I absolutely love what you guys are doing because it's great art and it's surprise, it is a discovery. And yeah, is that what you're trying to accomplish? Are you trying to what's the word? Show people, educate people with art, show them what's possible in the Web3 space? Is that what you say you're doing with Art Crush?
Yeah, it's less about educating than exposing people to art. That's the first step.
Right.
If you never seen it, and it's difficult to get educated on that. But the slogan or the sort of a catchphrase that Matthew always used to describe what he does at Art Crush is quite poetic. He says that his aim is to color the life of people when they least expected it. So, you have grim days going to work at 6 in the morning
Right.
in a grey environment in the fucking subway of Paris. It's not the best life, but
Right.
if you can get to see some artworks along the way, I guess your days gonna be a bit more brighter, and that's the overall idea at the very least. That's the mission, I guess. It's to color the life of people whenever we can.
Yeah, what a beautiful initiative, man. Because I feel like in the Paris Metro, we're only sold things, and I love the idea of just being shown art. So beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful. What, in your opinion, makes a great art curator?
Uh, Sorry, I was muted. I often like what Rick Rubin is saying about as a music director, his own personal taste and sensibilities has proven useful for artists, and I think that's something curators should aim for. Your input should be an input that elevates the art and elevates the artist. And we use the term curator as an umbrella term within the space. You can be, a lot of people think curator is here to find new collectors and to sell you artworks. Some of the things curator should be great scenograph and should put up great show. Some of the things that curator should be event organizer and do all those parties and make it a big event whenever you do a show. So, the term itself needs to be defined and I guess more refined to what it actually entails to. We make a lot of confusion in just a large word we use for many, many different things indescriptibly. But I think, yeah, just about being involved in it and being professional, being a bit organized, and think about everything from that gets into an exhibition whenever you do one. I personally still working at the moment on an exhibition for Paris Photo Fair, for example, at the EAM Gallery. And the idea here is to sort of showcase Web3 photographer that you will not never see at Paris Photo, and sort of expose the under exhibited artists and give them a venue for to be perhaps collected by traditional art collectors as well, and do a bit of education and just do something that looks nice and that artists can enjoy and that we're proud with, and yeah, and if you can make it worthwhile commercially, that's even better. But it's just like curator in the space have to wear as many hats. They have to be the scenograph, they have to be the event organizer, they have to be conference organizer, they have to be uh, art dealer, they have to be they have to be sponsor or whatever. I mean, there's so many things that just goes beyond what we usually do as curation. Usually, a curator in trad art space, they would just select artists and that's it. They'll send it to the museum, and the museum will do the rest. Um, so we have to wear many hats. So it's difficult to say which hats is the most important, but I guess a bit having some ethic and having some sort of sense of organization and wanting to uplift artists on the long term is the main characteristic of a great curator. Many people that define themselves as curator in the space are just people that have access to venue and things like that, and don't really do much about the selling aspect of it, or just don't do much about the scenography aspect of it. And you cannot really blame them because they try to offer opportunity they have access to, but it's just that, yeah, it's a lot of works, and and many things to develop. And there's a few handful of great creators in the space, not many, but a handful. And yeah, I think their involvement in the space is as a positive sum and benefit everyone. And yeah, and uplift the space, I guess. That's the vocation you should have and the ideas you should aim for as a creator.
Yeah, and I really liked your thread when you were explaining. You were breaking down every rule you follow when you curate a space, and I was absolutely fascinated because I felt like artists could take some parts as well, and it really felt like it was kind of a business, right? Like you have to follow certain rules, you have to protect yourself, you have to do things a certain way to make sure you don't, get you lose things or waste your time. Uh, how important is that for you? Like, you feel like before you even start being a creator, you should really learn these aspects, right, to avoid making some really bad mistakes.
No, I mean you shouldn't like. There's no way you can master all those things before starting. It's aimed to make the mistakes, and the lessons I've made in that trade was the consequences of mistake I've made. And I can name some a few. I don't know when in 2021 when I was walking in a few DAOs, there was this guy say, "Oh, there's this guy called blah blah blah. He has a booth at LA art fair, and he wants you to curate it." I'm like, "Oh well, that sounds cool." So we didn't really discuss any pay whatsoever. It was commission based, but so he tell me, "Oh, can you make a selection of women artists in the space that are from California that may be interesting to be shown there?" And so I did the job, contacted all the artists, get all the works, etc. And in the end, the booth was like not entirely curated by me. It was just like they were just trying to leech me off for a few artist suggestion, and barely just a small portion of the artists that selected and contacted were actually shown on the booth. Not much was documented, and there was just like overall pretty bad communication with the guy. And I was so ashamed that I sort of wasted the time of artists and sort of make them think there was a great opportunity because I sincerely believe they were, and that all of that just went to shit and sort of disappointed people. So it's important to me to not disappoint people and have a sense of usefulness in what I do. And whenever I do things that just go sour, I just reflect on what went wrong and why I shouldn't trust people like that I've never worked with before, and try to just I don't want to disappoint artists along the way. That's the main gist of it. And that happened a lot of the time, even just contract base. I've telling the trade the story of when I did my first NFT exhibition, the gallery from Dubai I was supposed to work with and split the cost of display and rental sort of ditched me at the last moment, 5 days before the opening of the exhibition. And so I was left to find artists in last minute, and I was had to get care of all the entire costs related to the exhibition that I wasn't anticipating and on doing. And yeah, that was shit, and I don't want that to happen again. So along the way, I've sort of learned all those sort of things, and I know that the art market is a precarious market, and many people don't really get to earn their life. I don't think there is any curator in the space that actually make a living out of creation solely. Um, Plus, like maybe a few, but just like really the vast majority don't. And for that reason, a lot of people are willing to work for free, etc. But it can be fine as long as you work with people that you can be trustful with. But usually, the people that ask you to work for free are rarely trustworthy. And I just urge other curators to be mindful of that and not undervalorize the work, because that hurts every other people that want to do curation and be paid for. Because every time ask to be paid for, like for a Web3 event, they say, "Oh, but the others never asked for it." And I'm like, "Well, it's not my problem. They should ask for it. It's not because they didn't that I shouldn't." And yeah, and those things are just important for getting more professionalized approach to creation in the space that might be really needed. Because so far the quality of NFT show has been quite lacking overall, especially the one that whenever you don't have any budget to deal with. So, and that's a case by case basis. Depends if you're showing on the permanent space, at the art fair, at the booth in the Web3 event. You know, all that different contexts and different level of, I guess, of ambition and just an expectation. Uh, but as long as those, it's important for artists to be shown, I think, and to be exhibited. And yeah, and for that we need to have a trustworthy work environments with professional standard and expectation that goes both way, and we cannot expect artists to do all the heavy lifting
Right.
while we are, not that good with the rest of what is our responsibility. So yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah, I think in some way, as unfortunate as everything that's happened to you and these experiences, you still come out of this really, really knowledgeable in how things work because you're 25 years old. Imagine how you're going to be in 30. You're going to be a real master at this. So you don't regret any of these experiences, right? You do feel like, well, it helps you move forward and you help others.
Yeah. Well, main thing was that I either lost money or didn't make any money out of those things, which is, that's
That's a
the main
bummer.
challenge of it, I guess. I know it's just that you learn, but you cannot. At some point, you cannot afford, if you want to make your living or your vocation full time. You cannot afford to do those mistakes because otherwise you're just never gonna be able to
Oh,
make a
for sure.
living. So that's the main challenge. That I do wish I could have been more organized, so I could at least make some money out of it. But yeah, at least it was good learning opportunity, I suppose, and yeah, still have much to learn. Like especially on this topic of scenography, I'm not that good with my hands. So usually scenography, I have to work with external contractor to do so. But yeah, I guess the main thing is to find proper funding this day for proper exhibition. There is a bunch of opportunity here and there, but yeah, I usually know I'd like, even again, I've seen the trade, like I shouldn't take any curation opportunity if it's in a month or 2 months. You usually need to get 3 months to be properly organized. But then again, with the Paris Photo, I just had the confirmation for the place recently, and there was an opportunity I was presented with, and so that's a much shorter time frame. That's a month, but I think it's doable because I have someone with me to help me with the curation. I know the galleries that is in the space is Grida. I know she will handle everything from the software aspect to it. So that takes away a lot of the mental charge and just times constraint there is to it. So that's something that's doable in a month. But if I was on my own, I wouldn't have do it. I think.
Yeah, because it'd be way too challenging. So, are there things you wish artists would do more of?
Uh, I guess no, not really. I mean, artists are weird creators. I'm fascinated by, and whatever they do, I'm usually a big fan of. But I enjoy what Matt Kane has done recently with the Rapas, and I guess being able to express your mind freely online or just within your social circle without the fear of the consequences this can have on your collective base, on your market, is important because if artists are not free to do and say whatever they want, I think they will get frustrated in their practice. And so I like artists that subvert expectation, which McCain did with his drop, but with Super Rare Pass, and just express their, the things they're not happy with in the space, express the thing they are frustrated with, because then that's open up the possibility of talking about those notions within their work. And I think in the space we are sort of in our own echo chamber, and whenever someone tries to go against the currents of the tides, we sort of, all fall on them and sort of try to then tell them that they don't understand space and don't understand the ethos and blah 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 blah. And it's important to have an array for voices and thought thinkers that have another opinion than the one that is mainstream and the consensus, and sometimes in the space that has been difficult to do, I believe.
Yeah, because in my experience as an artist, I feel like something we're all looking for is freedom. And thank God for the Web3 space, right? Because I feel like we have a lot more freedom to experience in the Web3 space, with a lot less pushback, or even sometimes some things are, guarded. But yeah, do you feel like in Web3 artists have an easier time expressing themselves and doing what they want?
Well, less actually. I think it's less because they have,
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because first, is you're an artist in trad art market, you can afford to be an asshole. You don't need to discuss with your collectors at all. You don't need to be nice. You don't need to be sociable. Nobody
Right.
cares about that. They're just looking at the canvas that are hanging on the wall, and they usually talk with the gallerist. And most of them, it's not that they don't care to discuss with the artist, but it's just that what they must focus on is what the artist is producing, what not he's saying, and what is clout on social media. And I think that social media provide a more direct contact with artists, which is great, but also make it so that anything and everything that artist does is scrutinized and looked upon and criticized at any occasion. And that's intense and can be really mentally loaded. And that's challenging. So I think a lot of, that's why you have so many group chat, because, I've seen people would never tweet about publicly, and that they only feel confident sharing within private.
Arthemort, you there? I think you rugged.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah,
You're
sorry.
good. No problem. All right. So, can you hear me? Are you still here?
If you do, can you thumb up like that?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool.
I can see it too.
What's
Yeah,
weird?
man.
Changed
Yeah,
my connection.
this is the beauty of Twitter Spaces. Everything goes wrong, and it's beautiful, man. I love it. It's I love the randomness of everything in here. Um, so we're almost getting to our last question. Well, we are at our last question. I can't wait to ask you this, man. So if you could choose any NFT to add to your collection, which one would it be and why?
Oh man, I think I haven't went through your question, so I haven't had time to do my homework on that.
I got you there, huh? Uh-oh.
Yeah, I've been, sort of setting up aside some funds for a few specific purchase, and it's difficult for me to share it publicly because you're always scared that people are gonna snipe them. But one of the artists he was in the space a bit earlier, had to leave, but Joanny Le Mercier is one of my favorite artists in the space. And I was sad because I bought his project on FXH. It was a generative project on clouds, and I've been looking for a great generative project on clouds for years. And I thought this was it. And I bought on the drop, and I got my little ticket from FXH. And I'm not so user on FXH because I'm not so big on generative art. So there was a lot of their system that I didn't knew about, and so I bought those things, and it was a ticket, and I thought, oh well, I can mint my ticket whenever I want. But what I didn't understand is there was some sort of grace period to it, and so those, even if I didn't listed those, they were bought away from me for the same price I bought them, and so now I'm sort of
Jesus.
really sad that I those things I thought I had that I no longer have. And so rather than sort of what I want to have, is what I want to sort of want to have back, because I'm attached to the things I have. I rarely sold anything of my collection. And when that happened, I was honestly really sad that it was out of my control, and that sold without me, knowing about it. So I wish I could get this NFT backs, even if I pay a premium for it. Fuck it, But I was really disappointed that this was sort of sold without me knowing it, and that was on me. I should have read better the term of sales of FXH. I wasn't aware of that, but yeah, that sucks. That's I'm attached to the things I buy, and so whenever I fat finger things away, or just not get rugged like that. That's where I'm really sort of hurt, and I wish I could get those things back.
Oh man, the downsides of Web3 sometimes, huh? Well, Arthemort, thank you so much, man. What an awesome conversation. How strapped are you for time, man? Are you on a schedule? Do you have time for like two, three questions maybe, but from everybody in the crowd, or
Yeah. Some
what's your
people
time
have
like?
some questions from the audience. That's fine. I really need to go in like 15 minutes or something.
15
Just I
minutes.
have a doctor appointment, but aside that, I'm quite free.
Okay, cool. All right. Anybody? Okay. We'll take maybe like two questions. Rachel, okay. Rachel, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, Rodeo. Thank you so much for having me as a speaker. And thank you
No
so
problem.
much, Artem, for being so patient. And I love the conversation. I was hearing every single detail. Super fascinating about how you got into the art journey. And I really loved it, actually. And I just wanted to ask you a question that I've been very curious to know in my art journey. And that is, I've heard rumors that to get into an auction house, you need to have a particular trading volume. Is that true? And what is the trading volume? Or do they just boom an artist into the auction house based on the social media reputation? Or is it really important for an artist to even have a social media reputation to get into an auction house? How does it really go about it in Sotheby's?
Yeah, so those roles are subject to change. It's less about the volume, but then just what's your exchange rate for your art at the moment. A few figures that we sort of base our selection of is like, and that's valuable. That's true for every department and every object. So at Sotheby's, so usually we don't accept anything that's retails under 6,000 euros. So usually, and that's about like 3, 4, 5 year value. Don't really care about the social media, to be honest. It's more about that we know that there is a demand for the work, and then there's a proven market for it, and that they would find bidder and buyer for it. That's the, like, no, if we have something we're not sure if this is going to get bidder on, we don't include them. Even great artists and I guess well-known artists like Spac, those days is difficult to show at auction because a lot of uncertainty about about the markets, a lot of different collections, so it's difficult to know what's valuable and what's not. So yeah, you can be even a rock star of the NFT space. If sometimes your market is uncertain, we're not going to include you in those auction. So yeah, there's surely a threshold to sort of pass, but a lot of it of the selection process is up to the specialist and the head of sales directly, and they have a lot of liberty in what they include. I personally included a lot of things under 6,000 in my last auction because I wanted to sort of see if there was an opportunity at Sotheby's on a more emerging market, 1 to 5 ETH. It was a bet, but still not something they're going to reproduce anytime soon, I believe, because it just takes a lot of works. Even though it sort of get great news coverage, but what they care about is about the sales spec rather than the clouds. So yeah, it's more about just the value of sales, and usually, people say if it's worth to contact them. Actually, no, most of the time they will contact you if they want to include you in an auction, and they have some sort of listing of artists that they have on their radar as well. And it just takes a long time to make a sales, 3 to 4 months. Sometimes it's thematic, and sometimes you might not be a fit for it. So, yeah, it's a case by case basis. A lot of it comes to personal connection with the specialist and the head of sales, I believe, as well. And there's a few threshold, but it's not like there's a mathematic rule that we use for artists or that we have a performance score of like a market fit. Nothing like that. A lot of it is quite a mix of quantitative and qualitative factors we factor in to evaluate the potential of an artist at auction. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on it, if that helps.
Thank you so much. You just helped me a lot. That was a wonderful answer. Thank you very much, Artem.
Awesome. Anybody else want to come up? One last question? No, nobody. Okay, cool. Arthemort, thank you so much. Rachel, thank you so much for coming up. This was a great conversation, man. Let's stay in touch and let's do this again, all right?
I think thanks, Rodeo. It was great to have you. For you to have me, sorry, and yeah, I always appreciate the work. I've hosted a few space myself, so I know the work those need and required. It's always difficult to sort of take a step back from the guest and have them enough opportunity to talk. So yeah, it was really great, great experience, and really happy with that. And we'll be happy to join anytime in the future as well if you ever need to.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely hope we can link up at NFT Paris soon. I'm gonna run the street with you guys, projecting art everywhere.
For sure, yeah, let's do that.
Awesome. All right, thank you everybody on the crowd. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day, everyone. Take care.